One thing that surprises non-Israelis about Israel is that Israelis don't know what anti-Semitism is, or at least not firsthand. Certainly, Arabs living around Israel are deeply and pathologically anti-Semitic, and murderous terrorist attacks on Jews inside Israel definitely are anti-Semitic. But Israeli Jews' daily lives do not exhibit this this phenomenon, this experience. Um, I'll give you an example or an illustration. When I was in college, it was at Haifa University. My Latin teacher was an older Russian lady who had immigrated to Israel in the 1970s, and she always shunned Cicero texts as much as possible. She wouldn't assign Cicero to us. Um, Instead, she had us read texts by Caesar. And of course, the students kind of complained that here it was in the textbook, and we're not doing Cicero, who is known as a great, great writer, great orator. And so we asked why we never got to read Cicero, and she explained that she didn't like Cicero because he was an anti-Semite, whereas Caesar, as a hard-nosed pragmatist, was not. And so the young Israeli-born students, we all chuckled and rolled our eyes at this explanation. And we all thought it was silly to care about such things 2,000 years after the fact. And it was evident that our teacher was hurt by our scoffing. But later that week, in the next class or the next after that, uh, she brought up this incident in class, and she said that she thought about that conversation and reconsidered. Her feelings were hurt originally, but she reconsidered it, and she said, "I'm glad, actually. I'm glad that you were born in Israel and you do not know and cannot imagine what anti-Semitism is, what it feels like. That's a good thing. You're lucky." And so I'm not critical of your kind of the attitude that we gave her. And that episode really has had a made a lasting impression on me. And it reminds me, even now, 30 years after the fact, how successful and impactful Zionism has been, and how the gift bestowed on a Jew growing up in Israel cannot be bestowed on Jews growing up elsewhere. It is a Jewish experience and a Jewish identity that cannot be replicated elsewhere. And this essential difference between Israeli and American Jews is palpable for every American, Jew or Gentile, visiting Israel, and for every Israeli visiting America, because each visitor, here or there, senses immediately that that these are not the kind of Jews I know from back home. Okay? Sociologically speaking, it is evident that Israeli Jews have the mentality and sensibilities of a majority group, whereas American Jews think, feel, and behave like a minority group. Okay? American Jews are, by all measures, well integrated into the American mainstream and are highly successful in terms of socioeconomic status, educational and professional attainment, and cultural and political influence. Nevertheless, they carry with them the sensibility of a marginalized, and endangered minority group. And this is a product of a Jewish collective memory of discrimination, oppression, expulsion, and murderous attacks in in Europe over countless generations, and the place of origin of American Jews. Um, but it's not just a collective memory from your grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe. It's also a product of American Jews' own memories, their personal memories. Okay? Look, few American Jews experienced actual physical violence or even verbal assaults for being Jewish. But virtually all of them experienced the occasional discomfort of feeling like a foreign element in your own society. Okay? As Jews in a Christian culture, virtually every Jew in America has had the experience of explaining that he or she does not celebrate Christmas, or sitting out a public prayer at a Christian, or sitting out a Christian pageant in some sort of town celebration, or otherwise feeling like an outsider in a group of non-Jewish friends. Okay? And this sense of discomfort and insecurity or uh, uh, estrangement, not insecurity, it's estrangement in American society. Um, and again, it's a product of Jewish history and collective memory, and a product of small personal experiences. The sense of discomfort and estrangement is then exacerbated and enlivened by stories that the Jews read in the news about anti-Semitic words or anti-Semitic deeds somewhere in America today, in some corner of America. Okay, and so the result is that despite their great success and influence and integration and acceptance in American society, Jews carry with them the mentality, okay, the sense of vulnerability of a marginal group. By contrast, Israeli Jews grew up as the majority group in their society. Thus, even though they share with American Jews the collective memory of Jewish victimization by Gentiles over generations in Europe and in the Muslim and Arab Middle East, they never experienced on their own skin the feeling of being a foreign element in society, a foreign element in the culture. Okay, so because the reigning culture in Israel, the language, the calendar, the holidays, the religion, the pop music, all the sensibilities of daily life, and the literature, the national symbols, all of these cultural elements are theirs. Okay, so the work week therefore begins on Sunday. Okay, not Monday like for Jews here in America. Here they have Sunday off because it's the Christian Sabbath. In Israel, that doesn't happen. The Sabbath is their Sabbath, and work begins on Sunday. The street food and the fast food are kosher. The country shuts down on Saturdays, on Friday afternoon, to welcome the Sabbath. Christmas passes by unnoticed. The language spoken on the street is Hebrew. And the names of the people and the places and the towns are all biblical. Okay, so no Jewish child in Israel was ever excluded or ridiculed or beaten up for being Jewish. Okay, because virtually all the children in the school are Jewish. Okay. And an item from the news illustrates or repeatedly, scandals involving Jews illustrate the difference between these two Jewish populations. So, for example, when the Bernie Madoff scandal exploded in whenever it was, and exposed this American Jew as one of the worst financial crooks in American history, I still remember it was 2008, 2009. Um, I remember how American Jews cringed and said, in public or in private, um, why did he have to be Jewish? Why did this now reflects on me? Okay, and wondered, will this now lead to anti-Semitic acts or anti-Semitic thoughts even against Jews? Okay, will my colleagues, my neighbors, my friends think differently about me because of Bernie Madoff? And this happens repeatedly. Okay, in the 70s, when the serial killer Son of Sam was identified as David Berkowitz, um, the same kind of discomfort and worry circulated among American Jews. Okay, now this way of thinking, or the currently the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Okay? This way of thinking is completely foreign to members of a majority group. Okay, so for example, if you compare Bernie Madoff to Ken Lay, the CEO and the chairman of Enron during that scandal. Okay, so when Ken Lay was arrested for his own financial crimes, or when compared Son of Sam, Ted Bundy. Okay, when Ted Bundy was apprehended, no Anglo Protestant American was struck and considered how will their crimes reflect on us white Protestants, white Anglo Protestants. Okay? It would never occur to an Anglo-American that anyone might think differently of him simply for having the same ethnicity or religion as Ken Lay or Ted Bundy. Okay? And the same is true of Israeli Jews. Okay? Jewish criminals are arrested in Israel every day, and not one Israeli Jew fears that these criminals might besmirch the good name and good standing of other Jews in Israel. Okay? As a majority group, Israeli Jews are not burdened, socially or culturally by their Jewish identity. Okay? Their Jewishness does not separate them from the general population and its values and sensibilities and tastes and symbols and their habits, because, like I said, the general population and the culture are Jewish. Okay, so it's like that saying that fish in water don't know that they're wet. Jews live a Jewish existence in Israel without even trying. Okay? But American Jews, like most minority groups, are constantly aware of the fact that their Judaism separates them from their Gentile neighbors, colleagues, and friends. Okay? It makes them different. And so, like other minorities, they regularly just by habit, they try to imagine themselves through the eyes of their non-Jewish neighbors. Okay? It is a constant psychological burden, this extra work that minority groups do. And it produces a latent fear of the Gentile culture that surrounds American Jews. And because of the fear, because I have to live in fear or concern, I have an element of resentment as well. Okay, so this psychological burden of Jews as a minority group in a Christian culture produces a latent fear of the Gentile society or Gentile culture around, and as well as an intense need for reassurance and acceptance from this Gentile culture, this non-Jewish culture. So this different cultural experience of American Jews and Israeli Jews accounts for that recognition by any casual observer, like I said, that these Jews are not like those Jews. This difference is observed and commented on by American and Israeli Jews alike, bringing an element of alienation to their relationship. Israeli Jews, as a majority group, have no need to constantly evaluate how their friends, neighbors, and countrymen see them. So one of the great gifts that the State of Israel offers its Jewish citizens is that it allows Jews, for the first time in 2,000 years, to live their daily lives free of the insecurities and the psychological burden that minorities feel. Like I said, no Israeli Jews pauses to consider whether it is safe to walk onto a college campus with a kippah on his head or a Star of David medallion on his chest, on his or her chest, okay, or whatever it is that, for example, during the kind of anti-Jewish riots in New York, forget where else, and definitely in Europe, in Paris and Hamburg, Jews removed the mezuzah from their doorpost, okay, so that outsiders won't know that this is a Jewish home. Okay. Israeli Jews are liberated from these kinds of thoughts, concerns, okay, because Jewishness is not a limiting or othering factor for Israeli Jews in their social lives. So they take for granted their Jewish identity, just like French Catholics do, and German Lutherans do, and Jordanian Muslims do. And when you look at American society, this explains why Israeli Jews relate and interact so easily with American Christians. Whereas American Jews, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I said it correctly. It explains why Israeli Jews interact with so easily and so well with American Christians. Okay? So American Jews are trepidatious in their interactions with American Christians. By contrast, Israeli Jews share with American Christians a cultural confidence typical of majority groups. Okay? And this is what explains the seemingly odd sociological finding that Israelis who move to America marry non-Jews at an even higher rate than do American Reform Jews or secular Jews. Okay. Now, an even more important consequence of this difference between Israeli and American Jews is how the two Jewish populations differ and even clash on the collective experience of Jewish victimhood and the Holocaust, Jewish history, including the Holocaust. Now we look at the Holocaust as it's portrayed, as it's understood, and it's conveyed in America. The the systematic imprisonment, enslavement, torture, and extermination of Europe's Jews had a tremendous delegitimizing effect on anti-Semitism in America. Once the horrors of the Nazi Holocaust became more broadly known in America, roughly in the decade after World War II, anti-Semitic words and deeds became increasingly unacceptable in polite society. And the result was that Jews encountered a more compassionate, respectful, and accepting attitude from American colleagues and neighbors, and also from prominent and influential American institutions like churches, universities, uh, corporations, etc. And well, the government too, but although the American government at different levels has never exhibited systemic uh, mistreatment of Jews. But anyways, in the society and in the culture, anti-Semitic words and deeds became unacceptable anymore. Okay, so if before World War II, anti-Semitism was expressed, manifested, and tolerated casually, in the second half of the 20th century, it became disreputable and even disqualifying, again, for civilized people. Um, so, so the Holocaust became the central pillar of Jewish identity in America, not only as a reminder to Jews to be grateful for the blessings of America compared to the horrors of Europe um, and the Soviet Union and the Arab and Muslim Middle East, but also as a way to cultivate sympathy and consideration for Jews among the non-Jewish culture that surrounds them, that surrounds them in America. In Israel, by contrast, the Holocaust was seen as yet another reminder to Israelis that the only safe haven for Jews, the only true safeguard against anti-Semitic pogroms and expulsions and murder, is a sovereign and strong Jewish state. So on the occasion of Israel's 70th anniversary, this is 2018, Bret Stephens from the New York Times, I think he at the time he was already at the New York Times, maybe the Wall Street Journal. In any case, he wrote that the purpose of Israel is not to showcase Jewish victimhood, but to end Jewish victimhood. In this respect, the mentalities of Israeli and American Jews often clash because the two communities project conflicting images of Jews. Whereas Israeli Jews want to project an image of a strong, successful, and prosperous country, American Jews want to project an image that would elicit warm-hearted compassion and sympathy towards Jews. And this is why American Jews often highlight Jewish victimhood in Europe, in America, in the Soviet Union, and in Israel, in the Middle East. Israel's strength and security and prosperity undercuts this Holocaust-centered identity that American Jews have in their minds and project to others. And this clash of images reflects a clash of purposes between the world's two largest Jewish communities. Okay? The Jewish state highlights and is dedicated to preserving Jews' separateness. Okay? The state of Israel's reason for existence is the claim that Jews are a distinct nation with its own distinct history, culture, language, and land. Okay? By contrast, American Jews highlight Jewish connectedness, okay? How integrated they are in the American experience and how well they harmonize with other Americans. And this clash of images and clash of purposes is particularly visible and vivid in Jewish museums. And you'll see this if you Jewish museums in America are quite different from Jewish museums in Israel. Okay? We cover this more extensively in the book, but you can see that in Israel, Jewish museums are inward-looking. Okay? They highlight Jewish achievements and experiences as expressed in Jewish life. Okay? So they explore Jewish scholarship of Jewish holy texts, either in Israel or in the diaspora. They explore they highlight the evolution of social practices within different Jewish communities, again, in Israel and the diasporas. Um, Differences and similarities between different Jewish communities across regions or across times. They highlight Jewish art that reflects Jewish sensibilities and Jewish ideas, or just any other uniquely Jewish expressions and experiences of Judaism, Jewish life. Um, by contrast, Jewish museums in America are outward looking. They highlight Jewish achievements and experiences as expressed in American life. Okay, so they showcase the Jewish experience in America as a profoundly American experience. Okay, rather than highlighting the Jewish part, they highlight the American part. Jewish museums in America make a constant and consistent effort to explore Jewish accomplishments and experiences that have shaped or contributed to American or Western society and art and science and technology and politics. Moreover, museum exhibits present explicitly Jewish experiences like the expulsion of the Jews from Western Europe, or pogroms in Eastern Europe, or the Holocaust in Germany, well, in Europe. They present these explicitly Jewish experiences as experiences that reflect struggles that all Americans and all humans face: prejudice, exclusion, persecution, violence, etc. Okay, so anti-Semitism is presented in these American Jewish museums not as a threat to Jews alone, but as a threat to Western values and American liberties and to vulnerable groups in society generally, in any society. Okay, so what you see is when you walk through an Israeli and American Jewish museum, is that you see that Jewish museums in America celebrate how similar Jews are to non-Jews. They explain Jewish sensibilities, Jewish practices, and Jewish experiences as relatable rather than expressions of a distinctive culture. So if Jewish museums in Israel highlight Jewish particularism, American Jewish museums universalize the Jewish experience. So you can see this in Holocaust museums. Museums established to educate the public on the Nazi Holocaust, therefore dedicate themselves to educating the public on civil rights, racial and religious tolerance, war crimes, things like that. Again, universal concerns. Meaning that American Jewish museums use the Jewish experience as an opportunity to help Jews and non-Jews feel a connection as Americans, to help them regard one another with sympathy and understanding by looking past what makes Jews different, and instead focusing on what makes them similar to their fellow Americans. In this respect, the Jewish museums the Jewish Museum in America encapsulates the Jewish American experience of assimilation and integration. These museums are themselves an outreach program. They're part of a Jewish desire to be accepted fully as normal Americans and to be welcomed by non-Jews, by non-Jewish Americans as one of their own.